I'm sure every street photographer out there has dealt with nerves at some point while out doing street photography. It just comes with the territory of taking photos in public places and obviously taking photos including people out in public spaces. Street photography is not always a walk in the park. A lot of times, you can be exposed to certain people or situations that can cause fear, anxiety, nervousness, nerves, and that's all normal. And on the one hand, that's partly just, part of the process and part of doing it. But also on the other hand, I think that once you do it more and more, some of these nerves go away, or at least things get easier. So in this video, I thought I would talk about just my thoughts on experiencing nervousness when doing street photography, and also some good ways that you can deal with it. I think a good thing to keep in the back of your mind is that all street photographers experience nervousness, I'm sure, some level of fear, and it's just a natural part of doing street photography out in the world. I just don't think that anyone should, be putting themselves down because you feel nervousness or fear out on the streets. It's perfectly fine. Another good thing to keep in the back of your mind is that you can improve on it. I also actually think that having some fear in street photography, maybe it could keep you safe in some situations. It's not always the case that your fear response is unwarranted. I think there are, some legitimate situations where some fear could get you out of, a bad situation. So I'm going to talk about 5 ways that you can deal with fear when you're out doing street photography. So the first thing that I would take into consideration is to just take it slow. When you're starting out in street photography, just do short sessions, and you can tell yourself, oh, when I'm doing street photography today, I'm just gonna do it for half an hour or whatever frees your mind up to basically be comfortable with the situation and comfortable with going out and doing it. I think that can help you get over some of the initial mental roadblocks of doing street photography. So the second thing that I think can be helpful is to just go out and do cityscape photos or urban landscape photos. So photos in urban environments and city environments that don't include people in them. When I think of street photography, I typically, consider it photos on the street that contain people in them. And I see cityscapes and urban landscapes as something that's related, but a slightly different genre. But I think this is a great way to get your feet wet, go out, explore your city or your town or whatever, and just take photos of buildings, of signs, of overpasses, of urban infrastructure. So this will get you used to being out in public spaces and in urban environments, with your camera, probably around people, and this will make you more comfortable doing it. It'll help you ease into it. So the third thing that I would recommend is to use a longer lens, like a 50mm lens, and potentially up to 85mm. I've never really done street photography using a lens that long, but I think 50mm is a good choice for this, for when you're starting out. because it puts some distance between you and your subjects, like if you're going to include people. And so you don't have to get up super close to take photos with a 50mm lens. You know, I think that's a big part of the fear of doing street photography, where that comes from is just like the uncertainty of not knowing if someone notices you, if they're going to like react or have like a negative reaction. And so by starting off with a 50mm lens, like it's another thing that helps you ease into it. So the fourth thing that I'd like to talk about is just having patience with yourself. I think that goes a long ways towards progressing. Like Rome wasn't built in a day. Like you can, like build on all of your experiences and, take your time with it. And like eventually you'll come around and like you'll have all of these experiences under your belt, and eventually things like just tend to get easier and more comfortable, like as with anything else, whether that be like an art form or a sport or whatever. Just like the more comfortable you get with it, and the more repetitions, the more reps you get, the better you get at it. And I think the same thing goes for street photography. So the last one I'll mention, it's not really a tip, it's more of just like, something to take into consideration. If you don't like street photography, if you don't like the act of doing it, like you don't have to force yourself into doing something that is going to make you miserable. I don't think that's like a good way to live your life. So I think that you should give it time if you really like the art form of street photography, and give it a shot. Do it as much as possible, but just don't do it if you find that it's truly not for you. Just find something else to do. Like you can find another creative outlet, and I think there are plenty of creative outlets like within photography that are pretty closely related to street photography, namely what I mentioned before, which is urban landscapes and cityscapes. I think there are some like really cool things that you can do with that sort of photography. Also like documentary photography. There's a ton of great work done in that genre. And so street photography is not your only option. And also with that said, there are a lot of street photographers who have combined their street photography with other genres of photography. So documentary photography, cityscapes, portraits, like the list goes on. Like street photography can be like, a major component or like a minor component like of a body of work. Like you can do whatever you want like with photography. Like you don't have to just shoot street photography. So I just thought of this last kind of like bonus tip, and I think that is to do abstract street photography. So you could do this with a 50mm lens, up to like an 85 is probably like the longest that I would go. But there are great street photographers out there, like Saul Leiter comes to mind, who do these amazing abstract photos on the streets. And it's not like all up in your face, like, a Bruce Gilden or, other photographers who get really close. It's just like a totally different approach, and it absolutely falls under the category of street photography. And yeah, there are a lot of photos that I love like this. A lot of these types of photos are like, use of reflections, things like that. And like, photographing from far away and making your photos into something more abstract rather than a more typical or traditional what's thought of as street photography. So those are my thoughts on dealing with nerves as a street photographer. I'm sure moving forward, as I do more and more street photography, like I'll come up with other ways for me personally to deal with nerves and kind of ease that and be more comfortable. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Are there ways, effective ways that you found that help you deal with nervousness or nerves as a street photographer? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.